until you know how to pray by law. Right? You see, in the Bible, the prayer by law is there. David says, in the morning, in the noontime, in the evening, I will seek your face, right? That's regulated. That's regulated. So you can't begin to pray by inspiration if you have not learned, how to pray in a regimented way, where you have something like a morning prayer. Pastor Luby will share with us in those days that the story of John Wesley. John Wesley prays every 15 minutes. Regardless of what he's doing, he will stop and pray. Every 15 minutes. So it's very good, especially now that people are just free. And I want you young people to go get that message, the myth called freedom. Freedom is a myth. It doesn't exist. People use it to deceive that you should be free. No. If I'm free from this, it's because I'm trapped with this. There's no freedom anywhere. We were slaves of sin. Now we are what? We are slaves of righteousness. There's no freedom anywhere. There's no freedom anywhere. So you see, we're on a home stretch in this, in this series. And we need to connect the dots. We need to be able to see how these things that we've been teaching actually come together. And the question we really want to ask yourself is it producing any fruit in me? As I was coming in here, it was Matthew 13 that just popped up in my head. The sower goes out to sow, right? And we know that that's the word. And the soil is the heart. So what is it generating? How is the word you are listening to? How is it shaping you? How is it challenging you? How is it troubling you? How is it becoming the standard by which you measure fulfillment, success? Who are you becoming? It's very, very important. Because we said that there's been that discipleship gap. There's been a training gap. There's been a mentoring gap. You see, discipleship, training, mentoring is not something that is just open-ended. It's leading you somewhere. There's someone you want to become. And you need to be able to review. Am I on the road? You need to begin to check your life too. Is this who a believer in God should be like? My experiences, do they reflect that I have a relationship with God? If I do something right, if I do something wrong, how do I really know whether those things are right or wrong? So, it's really very, very important. So, we're tracing our journey through this particular series. Because I said for many, I believe that from year 2000, or maybe middle there's not been any kind of a major move in the body of Christ. Just as we had in maybe middle 80s to 90s. That's when I believe, from observing what has happened in the church, there's been no major kind of salvation move where people actually got saved. And that's why I emphasize that particular, line that there is no way to Christ through the church. You can't become a Christian. You can't have a relationship with Christ because you start coming to church. There is no access into Christ through the church. You only access the church through Christ. So that you are in a church where you know all the songs, the pastor even knows you by name, and maybe he knows your house. It doesn't mean you are a Christian. It doesn't mean you are a Christian. It doesn't mean you have a relationship with God. Right? It doesn't mean there's anything, you can be involved in all the things that are happening. And I thank God for those who are sincere enough to, to check whether, because that's what this whole thing is all about. Check, examine yourself whether you're in the faith. Am I bearing the fruits of it? That's what I was sharing with, with somebody recently. I said, Christianity is not about good deeds. Right? That you are kind doesn't mean you are a Christian. There are people who don't have a relationship with God and they are kind. Some societies just have that. They just teach you. It can be fruit of home training. If I feed the poor, how does that differ from when Rotary Club, would do it? That's not the standard to measure, the faith. It's relationship first. So where are we from? Where are we headed? But in all these things, we need knowledge. We need to understand exactly what it is. Right? So it's time for that sincere, self-assessment of your belief, of your faith. Right? You're checking the missing pieces. Am I, is there anything missing? Like I said, some never came into the faith. Some entered and they got distracted. Some get stuck in the journey.